Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
All right, great to have you with us on the show today. It's great to see James Franklin put out a little tip of the cap, the hashtag Iron Lions of the week, and one of them was A.J. Harris. Of course, is transferred in from Georgia. He's one of the three that was recognized. Addison Penn was another one. That sounds like a good start.
Yeah.
This is the time of the year where you put in all that work. And this is something I talked with Greg Golden, the men's strength and conditioning coach. Now, Greg has not been here a year yet. He's been here 8 months. And what's going to happen is this, is that you have several players on this team that, even though they may be older, that still need the strength and conditioning program. And some guys have put on some good weight since they got here basketball-wise. But there's the type of shape that Mike Rhodes wants and needs them to be in for the style of play that they play. Greg understands that. But now he's going to have a full off season to get them on path. And it's not just getting them on path for this year. It's the kind of program where you need to stack a couple of years. You can't stack years when you've only been there 8 months. And even the players have only been here 8 to 10 months.
Yeah.
So getting them into the weight room and into the program they want to get them on track, it should be a team. There's several players on this team that don't have what I call Big Ten bodies. And in this conference, the way it plays, you need to have, quote, a Big Ten body. You need to have more mass because you're going to get pushed in this conference underneath. And that's something that Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA, it's going to be interesting to see how they adapt to that part. At the same time, the conference is going to have to adapt how they play, too. It goes both ways. But the power part of it, where if you play a game against them, their style's fine, the whole deal. It's when they have to play 3 or 4 games in a row like that, where now it starts to wear on you. So we'll have to see how those 4 play out. Well, the same thing with Penn State, right? You can wear down over a period of time. And there's something else that is a subtle part of this. Because they had to put the team together in 59 days, and they were able to get practices in, and yes, there's no question of playing in the foreign tour, which gave them extra practices in the summer. When you're trying to install everything that is new from offense to defense, you need that extra time. But there is a downside to it. Everything has unintended consequences.
What is that?
And because they've been playing. Nobody's had a break, and you start to wear down a little bit. You got some guys logging a lot of minutes, and you were logging a lot of practice minutes in the summer. You're logging a lot of practice minutes in the preseason. You're logging a lot of practice minutes during the course of the season.
Yeah.
There is a point where there are going to be some guys that need some time off. Right? I don't mean now. I mean when the season's over, they're going to need a little bit of time off, just kind of like, okay, right, and go from there. This is having the foreign tour to start. Big plus because you had to install everything and had to have some practical application with it. Okay, unintended consequences. That's a lot of basketball being played. And this is where I have talked about this repeatedly, my admiration for LeBron James. All those years, in 8 and 12 in particular, where he played in the Olympic Games and was playing in the finals. Well, the finals go into June. The Olympic Games are in July, early August. He kept playing. He was playing so many games in a given year. He played more games than anybody because because 10 years in a row he was in one form or another in the finals.
That's why players like Kevin Durant, I have the most respect for him because of that 2021 year. He came back from a torn Achilles.
Yeah.
Came back and played a full season that was delayed due to COVID stuff and the bubble and things like that. Played a full season, then played the Olympic run and carried the team to a gold medal, and then played a full another season. Like, he played 2 straight seasons with less time in the middle, not just because of the Olympics, but also because he literally flew from the playoffs directly to the Olympics. Yeah. And in the playoffs, by the way, he was a toenail away from going to the NBA Finals, which in that case he would have flown right to the Olympics and started playing immediately, like Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton did. Like, it was an immediate switch for them. So that's crazy. And I have the utmost respect for them. But I have a question on this practice games topic. Sure. Yeah. I saw a clip from a Gino Auriemma interview where he was talking, of course, the UConn coach, one of the greatest coaches of all time in basketball. Yeah. He was talking about how he was coaching his son's team, and a lot of the players in the AAU circuit now play 6 games in a week and have 1 practice. And that players are more athletic and they are better built for the game today, but they're not better skilled. The skills are the exact same as they always have been, but they're practicing less. And it's kind of balancing. And it brought up a question of, do you think the AAU model of all these games and no practicing is better for players than 6 practices and 1 game a week? Because a lot of coaches now are saying, like he said, 2 players on his team said they were dropping out of the team going to another one because the other coach said, you don't have to practice, just come to the games. And Gino was like, no, I want to practice. I want like you to understand the game and the systems and everything. And the other coaches are saying, no, just come to the games. It's an interesting topic, especially with today, and that the AAU circuit is completely changing how basketball is built today.
And they're wrong. Because what happens to be one of my bigger complaints about today's game. One of my bigger complaints about today's game is how much I cherish a player that knows how to play the game at both ends of the floor. You can't understand how to play the game at both ends of the floor unless you correct what's going on in practice. You just can't play games because what's the part of the game that the players don't like in practice?
Defense.
Yes, over and over and over again. When a practice flips to offense, boy, is everybody engaged.
Yeah.
Right? You know, here's a chance to go out, score, make a play, the whole thing. And they don't, okay, the defensive part is the more difficult part to pick up. And you have to go through and work over and over again on the defensive part, the footwork part, the angles of it, you know, the switching, things like that. You can't do that just showing up at games where now it becomes a fundamental mess out on the floor because people don't know how to play. They only know how to play one part of it. And even then, on the AAU circuit, who are you trying to impress? Are you trying to make everybody around you better, or are you trying to get noticed and make yourself better? AAU, you're trying to get yourself noticed, and you're trying to make yourself better. Oh, and by the way, if everybody else gets better around me, that's cool too. Right? That's not a put down. That's just the reality of what AAU basketball happens to be, because you're trying to get noticed so you can get a scholarship. Right? So I understand the goals here. But once you get to college and you're playing a team game, you have to play a team game at both ends of the floor. And sometimes that's, you have to pick a way to win. Rutgers is an interesting team. They're not a great offensive team. They're 258 in the adjusted Ken Pom rankings.
Yeah,
offensively,
not great.
But they're 10th defensively. Part of their offense is, to be frank with you, the missed shot. They average now 13.2 offensive rebounds per game. because they miss so many shots, there are more rebounds available.
Mm-hmm.
And so offensively, they're not great. Now, they've got a recruiting class coming in that may change that around for them. They got a couple of guys coming in that...
Ace Bailey, the better Harper son.
Yeah, that should help. But you have right now, in both college football and college basketball, in college football, what's the heavy emphasis on camps right now? 7-on-7. Okay, who's not a part of 7-on-7? The lineman. Right. And everybody talks about, offensive lines, the whole thing. Toughest part on the football field to develop are the guys in the trenches. And when you're looking at a high school game, say, for example, you've got a guy that is 285, 290, and he's going up against a defensive tackle that might be 230, 235 because town against town.
Yeah.
That's the biggest guy they got. It's the hardest part to judge how good they are. That's why you have to have the eye for it, and they have the eye for it. But every time you turn around, it's a 7-on-7 camp. It's a 7-on-7 camp. It's a 7-on-7 camp. It's a 7-on-7 camp. And so you're seeing that part of it with no pass rush, So you can see certain skills like that. And then on the AAU thing, I don't want to go because I don't want to practice. I just want to play games. Well, everybody wants to play games. You can't get better unless you practice. You can't.
Yeah.
Right? If you sit there and think that you're going to get better not practicing, okay, we are not all Allen Iverson. Practice. You're talking about practice. All right. But you can't get better unless... Okay, because in practice, I can stop practice. I can stop. All right. Let's talk about this. What did you do on that coverage at the corner? Okay? What should you have done? Okay? I can then now we go into video the next day. Let's play it back. Ding, ding, ding. See what you did. Now, if you do it this way... Right? You can make yourself better. It's exactly how to play it. Same thing in basketball. Right? Guys, okay, what are you doing here? I need you to come out and blitz. Right? I want you to blitz and not foul, but then you've got to get back and you've got to be in this spot. And the way they play, you've got to play here, and you have to be turned this particular way where you can glance and see over here, but the way they play, you've got to make sure you've got your eyes
in front
over here. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's why you practice over and over again, because that's where you correct the mistakes, where you can stop everything and say, okay, let's talk for a second here. In a game, you're playing, and you're going to call timeouts, and that's where you're going to do all the corrections? No. So for the players that had told Gino Auriemma, who has 11 national championships.
A pretty good resume.
Compared to the other coaches in the league who have combined for none. No, Coach, you're wrong. I'm going to go someplace where I don't have to practice. Excuse me?
It's crazy.
That is at that point, I don't want that player.
No.
I don't want the player. I want the player who then comes out on his own or her own in the empty gym when nobody's around taking shots. I want the player when nobody's around, right? The quarterback that pulls 4 receivers aside and say, hey, look, we need to go out and we need to run some stuff here. Just us. Get something corrected here. That route is 9. You got to cut it there. Okay, you're cutting it too short or you're cutting it too deep. We need to get the timing right on that. Okay, when nobody's around.
Yeah.
Okay, I need the player that sits down on their own and watches video and then calls a coach over. Coach, can you help me? I'm watching video here right now. Right? Help me out. Hey, you have to have the desire to get better every day.
And that's where so many players are like coming in today, especially where you see guys who are like, I want to be like James Harden. I want to be as good as him. Well, James Harden this season, he got traded to the Clippers. It has been a known fact now that since he got traded, every day after practice, he keeps all the big men, so Ivica Zubac and all of them, and they stay and do pick and rolls for like 2 hours straight.
Right.
Just pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll, because it's paid off. Zubac is having the best season of his career. He's averaging like 20 rebounds a game. It's insane. Like he's balling out because he's spending time with Harden practicing. But there are so many guys who say, I am great offensively. I'll figure out the defense later. There are enough offensive players in college basketball and pro basketball that like they're all good. They're all really good at the offensive side of things.
That's right.
Unless you are special at your offensive thing. If you're a 3-point shooter who's a knockdown 40% guy, like in recent years Desmond Bane or JJ Redick, for instance, like that's one thing. But if you're not that guy and you're just great offensively, you better be good on defense, because that's going to keep you in the NBA. If you can't defend, but you're okay offensively, every other guy is as good offensively as you are in the league. So you better be good at defense. And there are guys who are like, I don't need to practice that because I'll learn that later. No. Look at a guy like a Trae Young right now. Offensively, amazing. But the Hawks are at a point where they can't do anything because they need to get a defensive guard alongside him. And even someone like a DeJounte Murray, who's pretty good on defense, can't help Trae Young because he's just getting targeted. Steph Curry, great offensively. He very notoriously has gotten better on defense over his career to a point where he could not be the guy.
He's functional.
He's functional. But there are so many guys who aren't functional because they only practice the offensive side of things.
A guy like Drew Holiday's a good all-around player. He plays
probably
at both ends of the floor, and he's helped the Celtics tremendously because he can do both.
And now you're seeing the difference between the best defensive guard or best defensive wing in the NBA in Drew Holiday and not that in Damian Lillard.
Right.
Like Dame is okay on defense. He's not as serviceable as a Steph Curry is, and he's not Drew Holiday. And their defense has gone from first to like 24th.
Yeah, you can't have. If you have so many players that want to play offense and feel like they only play defense because the rules state you have to, you have a problem. And that's at every level. Coaches desperately want you to succeed. Okay? They want you to succeed.
Yeah.
Oh, they may climb on your back, but they're climbing on your back because they want you to succeed. Young players don't understand that. Some do, right? I always use this example, but I'll state it again. Have you ever heard Peyton Manning refer to any of his coaches by their first names? No. It's Coach Dungy, Coach Cutcliffe, Coach Fulmer, right? Every coach that Coach Fox. I remember, and then, of course, Coach Caldwell. So I've had the good fortune of knowing both Bill O'Brien and Jim Caldwell. Bill O'Brien coached Tom Brady. Jim Caldwell coached Peyton Manning. And I've had conversations with each of them about each player. And the common thread between the two great players is that the assumption is by America that they're just so good. I mean, how lucky am I? How much do you really need to do with Peyton Manning? How much do you really need to do with Tom Brady? And it's 180 of that. And this is where the world of fantasy football doesn't get stuff like this. Okay? Tom Brady really wanted to be coached hard. Right? And Bill coached him hard. Right? Because Brady wanted it. Oh, they made like the blow up at Washington or whatever. So what? That's a coach and this player. That's fine. Just because everybody on national TV got to see it. And I was kidding with Jim Caldwell one day, because Jim knows I've been around enough where I can kid around and I can say to him, I said, boy, you've done wonders with that Manning kid. He goes, I said, Jim, I said, how? And Jim laughed and I said, how hard does that guy need to be coached? I mean, and he knew what I meant. It wasn't one of those, he goes, Steve, he says, every time I turn around, he's got a question. Something about mechanics, something about what they're doing. He says he's always asking me to push him all the time. Right? Unless you know these people, you would never get a perspective on what it's like. Okay, just because you see a Tom Brady and a Peyton Manning, they quote, make it look easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the hard stuff and all the mistakes that they've made in practice that allow them to iron it out and make it look easy on Sundays. Right? Made it look easier in the toughest moments because they always wanted to be pushed. Jim told me, he says, I thought I was pushing quarterbacks before. He says, but this guy demands that I push him. He demands that we go over he says, he's got his own theater in his own house, and he's always watching for something all the time, always trying to find that edge, right? And again, that's the good fortune in a career that it turns out that two guys that I personally know and consider friends, I could talk to them about two of the greatest players ever as to what it was like. And I've talked to Doug Collins about Michael Jordan because he had Michael early in his career and he had him at the end of his career. And he said the same thing. He says, Steve, Michael always wanted to be pushed. He always wanted to be coached. He says he'd yell at other people, but guess what? You could yell at him, right? And tell him, hey, look, okay, you can get mad about that, but you're the one that did it wrong. Because he wanted to be good. See, the great ones want to be coached.
It was notoriously a big part of The Last Dance that Phil Jackson was going to be let go, and Michael was like, I'm not staying if Phil's not here because he pushes me every day. He makes me better.
Yep. And this is for all those kids who want to switch AAU because they don't want to practice, they just want to play games, okay? You are doing yourself a tremendous disservice to making yourself the best player you can be. Okay? You either want to get better, just playing games, okay, is not going to make you better. You have to do both. Just practicing isn't going to make you better. You have to do both. Okay? You have to be able to take practice and apply it in a game.
Very much so.
Right? So you have to do both. And you have to throw your heart and soul into both. Right? And if you want to do that. Now, that throwing your heart and soul into both includes you got to hit the weight room. You got to have great nutrition. You have to have great habits, great sleep habits. Oh, and by the way, built-in rest away from the game for a little bit of time. You can't go 365. You need to have a couple spots during the course of the year where you can just sit there and go, okay, right? Because it's like any job. And so for the young people who tell Gino Auriemma, I'm going over here because I just want to play the games and they don't practice, or they just practice one time a week. How are you getting better? You aren't getting better. You aren't getting better. Now, conversely, if you're only just practicing and not playing in games, you can't get better there either. You have to do both. Right? That's why when I see the NBA, which has taken load management to the extreme, to the point where now even they recognize, wait a minute, we've got a problem here. Okay? You're not getting the best product out there. You're not getting the best product. You can't get better unless you're playing games. Right? When these guys aren't playing, they also aren't practicing either. All right? And you'll see, well, Embiid scored 72. How much did he practice? Like, yeah, and what has he done since? He had a game. Well, that's nice. I'm glad he had a game. And obviously it was a great game. And how well did he play at Denver? Oh, that's right. He didn't play against Denver out there. Great. How much did he help his team that day? So you are at a point where the people that want to throw, that understand the value of a drill, not just a practice, but a drill within practice, and understand the value of it, and then when they put the drills together in a sequence, right? The ones that understand the value of both are going to be more complete players, have a better understanding of the game, are going to have the advantage over the one that just wants to go out and take shots. Right? And that's, if you don't understand the value of that, you're not going to get far with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you think, well, look, I'm out here for my AAU team. I'm scoring 32 a game. Like, okay, well, and I watched it, and you gave up 32, so your net was 0.
Mm-hmm.
All right? I mean, who's one of the greatest defensive players ever?
In the NBA?
Yep. Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm. He was, 8-time all-defense, something like that?
One of the absolutely great defensive players ever, right? LeBron James is a great defensive player.
Kobe Bryant,
right?
Great defensive player.
Because they understood the complete game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing 48 minutes. A good chunk of that time of that 48 minutes is playing defense.
I'll be on offense half that time. The other half is going to be defense. That's pretty much what NBA players have resigned themselves to. Is 24 minutes is offense, 24 is defense. That's what you should expect every game to be.
Right. And that's, if you go into an AAU thing and I'm playing 6 games a week or whatever, well, look at me. I've gone from 14 points a game to 19. I'm way better now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're not dedicating yourself to both ends of the floor, you aren't.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of players who are drafted where a lot of the reasoning they're drafted in the NBA is because players and people see that they have the acumen and the skill defensively, that they're far enough along, you can trust them defensively and they'll get better. And offensively, you can kind of figure it out. Offense, you can figure out faster than you can defense. If you are good on defense, it will stick through way easier than being good on offense can. There are hosts and billions of players who have been great offensively and not great defensively. And what have they done? Not played in the NBA.
No.
It's just what it is.
Well,
you can develop an offense. You can't develop a defense.
I'm wondering about the G League part of it, like G League Ignite and so forth. Again, to me, that's glorified AAU. Now, I may be wrong about that, but I'm getting like the glorified AAU. And like the 2 G League Ignite guys this year are Ron
Holland. Yeah, what they've been saying and the reasoning behind the G League, which is intriguing to me, is that they're giving these guys NBA players to be alongside them. So when they're doing these practices and drills, it's like, oh, this dude played in the NBA. Right. He knows what he's doing. He's here for a reason because he is helping us to develop our bodies and develop our sense of being in the NBA game, which is what the G League is in part doing. But it's that weird step where it's like better than college, but not better than the NBA. It's like
still need to stand out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I still need to stand out.
You know what's been the fun story this year?
Still a problem.
You know the fun story has been this year? Sam Merrill.
Yeah.
Great three-point shooter, was amazing in college for Utah State.
Yeah.
Developed his three-point shot to a point where he's 42%, but he developed his defense also in the G League to now where he's going and playing for the Cavs pretty much every night for 20, 30 minutes because they had injuries to Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. And now Merrill's playing, and he is balling out because he's great offensively, but he can stay on the floor on defense. Jalen Green with the Rockets, the 2nd overall pick in the draft, very notoriously is one of the most skilled offensive players you'll see, but his defense is downright terrible.
Sure it is.
And it has become a problem where Ime Udoka is benching him because he's like, I can't put you in on defense. Karl Anthony Towns had 62 points, and then Chris Finch benched him because he's like, I don't trust you on defense.
Right.
I just don't. That's insane. You don't see players get benched when they're 62 points into a basketball game. It doesn't happen. Yeah. And Chris Finch said, I don't trust you. Get out.
Well, Chris Finch's job's to win the game.
Yeah.
All right. And
offense can only get you so far.
I mean, and I realize we're in an offensive explosion in the NBA right now. We've had a lot of 50-plus games here in the past 2 weeks.
2 days specifically.
Been a wild time. But it's, and Embiid, by the way, is averaging more than a point a minute right now.
Yeah, he's the only other player that's ever done it was Will in the 100-point season.
Yeah, 62, when he averaged 50 points a game.
Insane.
You're going to average more than a point a minute because it's a 48-minute game, and he's averaging 50. All right.
Yeah.
But that is the complete player that knows how to play the game. How many times have you heard me say it? If you give me a guy that's a great athlete that knows how to play, oh my goodness, what a slice of gold.
Mm-hmm. Kawhi Leonard.
Right, that knows how to play. I mean, I don't care what sport it is. You give me a hockey player that knows how to play, understands where all the other chess pieces are. That's what makes Crosby so great. Crosby's out there on the ice. It's not going to be a perfect every shift, but he knows where the other 11 chess pieces happen to be. He knows what the angles are. He knows where to put the puck, the whole thing. It's what separates him. Right? Now, other people have separators too. Austin Matthews is on track for maybe a 70-goal season, which we haven't had in a while. You know, Connor McDavid, I mean, you know, I talked to Jack Michaels enough now who does the Oilers. You know, and Connor McDavid's just incredibly special. Right? But those are the guys, and same thing in the NBA, same thing, right? You watch in baseball, subtle things. Look at all the money the Yankees are spending. Okay, wow, that guy can hit. And then you watch the Yankees defensively, and they're like, okay, not very good. You watch the Yankees run the bases. Oh, mercy. Like, not very good. Right? Give me a player that knows how to do things.
That's why, like, Mookie Betts
does everything well.
Because he is famously now played the infield multiple times and played like 6 positions because he can do it. Right. Because he's a baseball player.
Right. Because, well, when he played against the Spikes, right, and I did the series up in Lowell, he was second baseman. He played second base.
He's played second. I think he's played short and third already in the MLB as well.
He's played all 3 outfields.
But that's the thing. You can put him anywhere, and you can be like, I will trust him to do this.
Exactly.
The reason the point forward has worked in the NBA is because people saw LeBron James basically become a point guard and just move things around. There have been so many stories of guys who have been in the league playing against LeBron, and they've talked about how, I think DeMar DeRozan was talking about it on a podcast where he was like, we were playing them in one of the Eastern Conference Finals, and LeBron was on offense, and he literally called out to our player where to stand on defense because he could tell what scheme we were playing. And LeBron called out his defense and then carved the defense out.
That's right.
And he just torched it.
Right.
Like, that is the level of player some guys are. LeBron, Michael, Kobe, like when you can see the floor and you can understand where everyone's meant to be. Rajon Rondo, the reason he was always so great and so valuable to the Celtics is because dude knew where to go at all times. Chris Paul, like all these players, they're really good because they get how to play the game. Kawhi Leonard, if you gave me 200 players and one of them is Kawhi Leonard, I'm probably taking Kawhi over all of them because he can play offense, he can play defense, he can rebound, he can do literally everything for your team at any point in time. If you say go play defense for 48 minutes, he'll play defense 48 minutes, and he'll be the best defender on the floor. Say go score me 60 points, he'll put up 60 points. It's just, there's certain value.
What was the running joke 30, 40 years ago? Name the only man that can keep Michael Jordan under 20 points a game.
Michael Jordan.
Dean Smith. Right? The coach. Because Dean Smith demanded a complete game. Jordan worked very hard in his defensive fundamentals at North Carolina. They ran a team-oriented, they had a team-oriented set. He had James Worthy, he had Sam Perkins. Right? And Jordan became an excellent passer. Right? And at North Carolina, under the Dean Smith system, when you scored a basket, you pointed at the person who made the pass because it was a team-oriented system they played. And they won a national championship in Jordan's freshman year. He hit the game-winning shot on a night where Worthy and Perkins played great basketball when they beat Georgetown. But it was all right. But that was instilled in him by his college coach. Why is it all those great North Carolina players who went on to have great scoring careers? Worthy had a great scoring career. Jordan a great scoring career. Bob McAdoo had a great scoring career. All gravitated back to Dean Smith. Always went back to North Carolina. Always called him coach. Because he instilled, through tough practices, the fundamentals that made them great basketball players. Now, they had to be the ones that, let's give them credit for embracing it and saying, okay, I need to get better. Okay? I don't care what you do, make me better. Right? And Dean Smith made it better. I mean, Jay Wright Okay. Now you see Jay Wright on TV, and I've talked to Jay enough in my lifetime. Where Jay is a great guy to talk to, right? But in practice, he was tough. I'm talking like to the edge.
Yeah.
Right? Because he pushed. Because then the games, the practices have to be tougher than the games. They have to be.
Yeah.
Right? And so now back to your point, or your question about the new way of doing things. Wrong. You're going to get an exponential. If everybody adopted this model, the product would be a sandwich with just bread. That's all it would be. Or just the filling and no bread. Okay, you'd get, and people would not enjoy it. They would not, they wouldn't watch it. Because, like, what am I doing here? I mean, this weekend, let's look at this weekend. What's coming up this weekend in the NFL?
The NFL, it
Flag
is
football. Nobody's going to watch. Okay? There's no blocking, no tackling, no team concept, anything like that. They're just going to be playing flag football. Right? It's just going to be for kicks in the yard, right? In a glorified setting. Nobody's going to watch that. Okay? Nobody's going to watch. Okay? You've got the NFL had 50 million people watch the 49ers game with the Lions. 50 million, like 50.4 million.
56 to be exact.
Right? Phenomenal, unbelievable, prime time Sunday night number. And what did they see? They saw great team football. They saw Nick Bosa make a couple plays off the edge. They saw Warner and Greenlaw make some plays at linebacker. They saw Jair Brown break up a flea flicker in the end zone that was actually pretty well executed, but he, from his safety spot, broke it up, right? You saw Gibbs make some plays. You saw him fumble, but he also made some plays. You saw Montgomery make some plays.
Jameson Williams. Everyone played amazingly across the board.
Jameson Williams ran a reverse for a touchdown. But you saw team concept all the way through. Sometimes the team concept worked, sometimes it didn't. But you saw all that come together. That doesn't come together unless you practice it. Everybody loves to play the games. The only ones that really succeed are the ones that embrace the practices and then embrace the games.
Bingo. And a part of the game, changing subject a little bit, is the officiating. And I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves beat the Thunder to take top spot in the NBA in the Western Conference. But after the game, he went on and was doing a silent interview with whoever it was for Bally Sports, I believe Leah Olson. I'm watching the clip now. They won by 6. He didn't celebrate after the game, though, after they'd won. What he did instead was say, oh, yeah, the refs were terrible tonight. I'll take the fine. The refs sucked.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting that he's like, I don't care. Like, I will take the fine. The refs are terrible. And it's so interesting to me that it feels like we're seeing more players across the sports stratosphere speaking out against referees this past couple years. And I know it's, of course, heightened in the soccer world for me because it's a constant thing with VAR and how that's working. But it's really interesting to see players and like willingly taking these fines, or Mike Brown a couple weeks ago bringing out the laptop to show a clip in where his player gets fouled and it's not called, or like these crazy things where these officials, it feels like more than not now, are either holding their whistle and not calling things because they're scared to call them because of the backlash they'll get, or calling things too willingly. And there are some refs who split the middle and are great, and some who are just like, just have issues.
It's like any profession. There are A's, B's, and C's. All right. A officials, like A workers, are the ones that on an almost everyday basis, or in this case, every game basis, you feel like there's a good chance they're going to give you a good game. Doesn't mean they can't have an off day. That happens. Everybody has that. trying to think which days Jerry Valeri was on. Okay, well, that's a different. We'll get to the C's in a moment. Just kidding, Jerry.
Yeah.
B's are the most frustrating one because they can give you a whole bunch of A performances, but they can give you C performances. You're not like, it's like you feel like, okay, it's a good official, right? And then as the game goes, like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And then there's the C's, which is unfortunately the largest group of them, where there's a level of inconsistency that creates them in the C category. It doesn't mean they can't make great calls, but more often than not, there's more of an issue dealing with the C group. And that's what, again, like any company, it's the same thing with any company. You got A, B, and C workers all over the place. You're like going, oh, boy.
Yeah.
Right? And then you've got people like that you rely on and count on, and they're the ones that are going to carry the day for you. And that's where you are with officiating, A's, B's, and C's. But, just to point out to Mike Brown, there are A, B, and C coaches as well.
Yeah.
Right? And this is something where you can point out a call that a guy made. But, gee, Mike, what about the call you made in the second quarter that ended up being a slam dunk the other way?
Yeah.
Where they read it perfectly and they kind of figured out what you were doing right away. We didn't bring that one up now, did we? No. All right? It's not like an official sat there with their laptop and go, hey, Mike, what about that call you made? That cost you a couple right there. So they have more of a bailout than ever before because of instant replay.
Yes.
I don't know if that's making them more complacent about calls. When I mean complacent, I mean like knowing that, hey, look, if I didn't get it right, I got a backup. Or I'm not calling it because I want to leave the door open for it to be challenged because I'm not sure. Right? So, at least in the NBA. See, in the NBA, you have challenges. Now, my question about Mike's call is, did Mike still have his challenge? If he didn't have his challenge, okay, that's his problem.
But that's the thing. A lot of the rules in a lot of the sports kind of stipulate there's certain things you cannot challenge unless it is called.
But the NBA is more liberal on.
It's more liberal,
right? When it comes to challenging challenge fouls.
Oh yeah. But in a lot of instances, like in the NFL, the reason players were like the pass interference one was really interesting. They screwed it up, but it should have been. If it's called pass interference, you should be able to challenge. Like there should be but like there's certain things in a lot of sports where you can't challenge a lot.
There's only one penalty you can actually challenge in the NFL. You know what that is? Right? Whether he's over the line of scrimmage or not.
It's just
right? You actually can challenge that.
But there are a lot of sports where you can't challenge things unless it's called. And in soccer, there are certain things that aren't called. And VAR has this very specific sentence in it, which is clear and obvious. It has to be a clear and obvious error on the official's behalf for VAR to say, you need to go look at this. And it's kind of become the point where as soon as VAR is called, it's going to be reversed. Because the ref isn't going to see the VAR thing and just not reverse it because it's clear that VAR has seen something.
I have a bigger problem with booth officials than I do with on-field officials.
I agree.
Where I sit there and like, let's take football. They're going to review it. I have had more questions about what the booth saw. I'll look at Jack and I'm like, what? I mean, either it doesn't matter whether it's Penn State or pro or con Penn State. It doesn't matter. We sit back and go, okay, I don't get it. Right? What are you looking at? And that's. I've had more problems with them. Yeah,
because they will slow things down in the slow-mo to like infinitesimal points, and then they'll say, this was clearly a reckless challenge in soccer. And it's like, no, you see it in the game. Like, his foot goes like this, hits the ball, and goes over it.
They take too long, though. Okay? Keep the game moving. Right? We're looking too often now for a fingernail. Like, just knock it off. You can't see it. Go on.
And that's the thing. The sentence in VAR is clear and obvious, but it takes them 5 minutes to find a clear and obvious error. And then they're like, you need to go look at this now. And the ref's like, is it clear and obvious? It took you 5 minutes to find something?
And I always love when they bring the little TV set out.
Oh, my God.
Like, the little TV set. Right? He's on the field looking at the thing. Like, just tell the guy from up above, hey, look, this is what we saw. We're done. Okay, next, move on. Just make it move. I don't need you walking over to the 20-yard line to look at the little tiny TV thing.
And that's a lot of fans have stated, like myself included, I would much rather there be no VAR and we just go with the refs' calls all the time than VAR be here and it's still getting things wrong. Yep. Or it's still calling things where you're like, that's just not a foul, or that is a foul, and how did you miss that? Like a couple months ago, this was a very big moment happened in a game my team Arsenal is playing in. We're playing Newcastle, and one of their players, Bruno Guimaraes, great midfielder, our player passes the ball, and he runs in and just elbows him in the head and keeps going.
These are your people. These are the people you love.
Yeah. And you see this.
These are your people.
And the player falls to the ground and, his head starts bleeding. People come over, they check him, they get him fixed up, all good to go.
I'll get him
and the players are like, is VR looking at that? And he's like, yeah, they looked at it and said it wasn't a foul. But you can see on VR, he winds up and elbows him. And it's like, how is that not a foul called? But then you see an accidental elbow where a player jumps like this because their body physically goes up. And then they slightly elbow a guy on the shoulder, and that's called a red card or something. It's like, there's no logic, rhyme, or reason to it.
Wow.
And the refs will see things that are so infinitesimal that it is impeding on the game and making it less fun. Where after every goal, you have this half second of, was he offsides by a millimeter? And then it's like you sit there and don't celebrate for 10 minutes because you're like waiting for VAR to call it offsides.
I agree.
It's terrible.
And it's too much. Now, for example, I thought in the Minnesota game on Saturday night, all the replay looks were quick and to the point. That's the way it should be. And for example, sometimes things happen.
Yeah,
Kanye Clary went down. But Parker Fox didn't do anything wrong. He didn't. It just happened to be two guys hit each other. And it's like, okay, and didn't see each other.
Yeah,
and that was properly called, properly officiated. It was properly officiated on the floor, and it was properly officiated when they looked at the replay. The problem is, I'll say this in defense of officials in basketball. Before the game, they do meet with the producer because that way they can put a face to the person they're talking to. But they'll go over to the monitor, and they're not giving him the look. Right? They've got to wait for the one that they need. Sometimes, they'll call it up, and the play that they want to look at is not the play that's on there. Like, okay. That happens sometimes, and, of course, the fans don't know. They're like, let's go. That's because they're not getting any look.
Yeah.
But I do go back to what I talked about yesterday, which I've talked about 1,002 times. We'll make it 1,003. But you should be showing every replay in the building. And it doesn't have to be just your cameras. Okay? If a network is paying all this money to carry, part of the agreement has to be because we're giving you the rights to our games, we have the right to carry your footage in the stadium on replays. That way our fans can see what the people at home are seeing. I'm sorry. You've got it. Okay, everybody's paying all this money. You can't be the last ones to know.
Yeah.
Right? You can't be the last one to know. Right? In college basketball, they sit there, they talk. Right? They go and tell each coach. They go over and tell the TV people. People in the building are going, I don't know what the heck happened. Right? Nobody else knows. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, here's one for you. Okay? Put a mic there.
Yeah.
Tell everybody in the building what we're looking at. They'll put it up on the board. You get to see it too. They make a decision. Stands is called, confirmed. Change.
This is what we saw. Flagrant.
He stepped out of bounds. It's a flagrant or whatever. The ball was out of bounds. Whatever. You know what I mean? Explain it.
Yeah.
Okay. They paid all the money.
Yeah.
They made all the effort. They bought the gas. They bought the parking. They bought the concessions. They did everything. Even bought souvenirs.
Yeah. And you know what sport, as we said yesterday, got it right? The NBA. The NBA has gotten it right with microphone, click, talk,
NBA
done.
has set the example for everybody as to how it's done. And when you're getting between $50, $60, $70, and $80 million a year in TV, you can invest the $1.95 in having that communication in the building. It doesn't take much to do, right? And it doesn't take much to put it up on the replay board. It doesn't take much, okay? Again, the network, each team that has their games broadcast should be allowed to use the network footage on the scoreboard. Why? Because you're already in partnership with them to carry the games, which means, you should be allowed to see their footage, and what they're seeing on TV, they should be able to see in the stadium.
Agreed. Fully agreed.
I mean, you're sitting there going through a replay over and over again. The crowd gets to sit there and goes, whoa, okay. Why have those gigantic boards in there if you can't use them? Like I said, the Ohio State game, it was a nothing replay. I mean, look, Penn State, right? It was a nothing replay. But you're sitting there, and we don't have a TV set there. So we're sitting there waiting, and Dick and I are looking at the board, and they're showing little kids on the screen. Okay, no, okay, it's adorable. That's why God created timeouts. You can show little kids on TV during the timeouts. That's great. I think it's adorable. But now this is a replay. Okay, every fan in the building wanted to know what the replay had to say. We as announcers wanted to know what the replay had to say. We had no access to it. The fans had no access to it, and in the end, we didn't even know what the call was because the public address announcer, who is really at Ohio State, they got a problem. Okay, I mean, no offense. I mean, I don't usually listen to those guys, but like, you can't help with this guy. Like, Dave Jones is the one that pointed it out to me. He says, Steve, he's bad. I got to give Dave credit. Dave knew what he was talking about. I mean, he's a problem. And having him explain what happened in the play, you've got to be kidding me. You can't even pronounce the names right. Favor Air. No, they have a pronunciation guide, and you can ask somebody if you're not sure.
Yeah.
It's like if you took a little extra time to do your job.
Yeah, that's why I know Mike Breen has talked about it, that before a season, the NBA will send them videos of every player saying
I'll go
their
through
name.
That. Yeah. Certain college teams do that.
And that's the best thing to do, is just everyone pronounce their name.
You can click on, you can hear them pronounce their name. Absolutely.
It's amazing. And I know soccer does it as well, where it's like, I believe there's a major database, and the Premier League has this database where every player in the league, as soon as you're transferred in, the first thing you do is you basically say your name on a camera, and then they like slow it down and everything, and they put it in a database, and everyone who wants to can go and look and find out how to pronounce their names. And it's the best thing to do.
Well, I tell my broadcasting class all the time before they do their first project. I said, take care of the little things, the big things take care of themselves. I said, not only tell you something that seems so obvious, I said, but I hear wrong so often. I said, that's the ability to pronounce names correctly. I said, nothing's going to kill your credibility more right out of the gate, because you're young to begin with. So you're already trying to close a credibility gap with an older audience. Okay? Now, what does this kid know? He or she, whomever it happens to be. I said, and if you pronounce something wrong out of the gate, okay, you're already fighting the credibility gap, which can only be closed over a period of time of good work.
Yeah.
All right? And if you get out of the gate and you don't pronounce names correctly, they're going to sit there and go, I'm going someplace else. This person doesn't know what they're doing. And I tell them, I said, it sounds like of course you got to pronounce the names right, except you have to go and do it. And I do the Adrian Amos thing all the time, Amos, things like that. Now, over and over again, because Tom Bradley was kidding around, calling him Amos. Everybody started calling him Amos, and I finally asked him. I said, "Is it Amos or Amos?" He goes, "Mr. Jones, it's Amos." Right? And then I had people telling me, because it was pronounced in the stadium, Amos. Right? Why do you pronounce his name wrong? I go, I don't pronounce his name wrong. Yeah, you call him Amos. I said, yeah, that's because that's his name. I asked him how to pronounce it. They went, what?
And it has gone viral recently. The Travis and Jason. How do you pronounce their last name?
Right. Yeah.
Kells.
Right.
It's Kells, but they've been like, at this point, just call us Kelsey because it's just easier for us to deal with. But they said, yeah. And like they're dabbing on their podcast and was like, it's Kells.
Right.
Like Travis Kells and Jason Kells. But everyone said Kelsey forever. So they're like, we'll just stick with it.
It's like, well, it's Joe Thiesman.
Mm-hmm. Not Theismann.
Right. Roger Valdesari, the late Roger Valdesari, who was in the world of sports information, was one of the greats. Said, look, he says, we could go with Theismann for the Heisman if we go with that pronunciation. So Joe Theismann went along with it, but the actual pronunciation of his name is Thiesman. And if I'm broadcasting the games, I just go by what they say. He wants to be Theismann. It's like, like when he was at Pitt, the first couple of years, it was Tony Dorsett, right? And he said, no, it's Tony Dorsett. The last couple of years, well, that's okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's. Like I always tell the Matt Lehman story. I said Lehman. My first 2 years I was at Penn State Wilkes-Barre in Lehman, Lehman. I said, hey, Matt, you can tell Matt's going to play. I said, is it Lehman or Lehman? And he said to me, well, it doesn't matter. I said, what do you mean it doesn't matter? He says, I'm just glad I'm playing. I said, yeah, but Matt, I have to pronounce your name in the air. I said, at the family picnic, what is it? He goes, well, it's Lehman. I said, then it's Matt Lehman. Right? Like Jesse Della Valle, Valle. Is it Della Val or is it Della Valley? That's why you take the time. It's a small thing, but if you take care of the little things, big things take care of themselves. That's why, back to your original point about practice, that's where you take care of the little things, because in the games, big things take care of themselves.
Look at that. Looped it back into the start just as we wrap up here on Sports Talk with Steve Jones.
Thank you for listening to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a 7 Mountain Media production. Come back at 11 every weekday for analysis of the latest happening in the sports landscape. From college football to European soccer, Steve and Kyle cover it all on